The Indian aviation space is one of the toughest places to do business. In the past 10 years itself, India has been the fold of giants like Kingfisher, Jet Airways and Sahara Air and even the iconic Deccan Air, and even while existing airlines have been struggling to make a profit, Indigo had been insanely profitable for 10 consecutive years till 2018. And even if you draw take a deep comparison, you will see that in 2015, while Jet Airways was a still dominating player, while Jet generated a net loss of 2097 crores, SpaceJet generated a loss of 687 crores. Indigo was way ahead with a profit of 1300 crores. And today Indigo is so far ahead of its competition that if you look at India's non-stop domestic market share, while Aspire stands at 11.7%, Air India stands at 10.2%, Goyer stood at 8.8%, whereas Indigo was way ahead with a 52.7 market share, which is more than the next 5 competitors combined. The question is, with Indian aviation being such a tough market to operate in with giant competitors like Jet Airways, Deccan and Air India, how did Indigo become such a strong monopoly, and most importantly, how on earth had this company been profitable for 10 consecutive years? The answer to Indigo's massive growth could be summarized by Louis Pasteur's quote, wherein he said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." To tell you about it, back in 2005, when Indigo just entered the market, the Indian aviation space was being dominated by the likes of Jet Airways, Deccan Air and Air India. This is when both Kingfisher and Indigo started operation. But if you look at the growth of these companies after 2005, there is something interesting to note. Until 2007, all these companies are operating with losses that were proportionate to their scale. While Kingfisher incurred a loss of 408 crores, Spices stood at a loss of 132 crores. Jet Airways stood at a loss of 423 crores, whereas Indigo entered a loss of 234 crores. But suddenly, after 2008, something crazy happened, and out of nowhere, Kingfisher's losses shot up by 4 times to 1,900 crores. Spingal's losses shot up to 340 crores. Jet loss was relatively stable at 400 crores, but somehow Indigo managed to pull off a profit of 82 crores. And after that shock, while Kingfisher and Jets started failing, Indigo's profit again shot up by 400 to 484.7 crores, and from there onwards, Indigo's market share started increasing rapidly, eventually turning it into a monopoly in the Indian aviation business. Now the question over here is, how did these giant players suddenly fall down? And moreover, how did a baby company like Indigo end up becoming a monopoly? Well, that is because Indigo very carefully avoided the mistakes made by these airlines, and on top of that, it deployed some game-changing business strategy that changed the Indian aviation space forever. To understand this, let's try to understand the 3 fundamental truths of Indian aviation. Number 1, in spite of the airlines business being an extremely capital-intensive industry needing thousands of crores of investment, the cost of flying in India is already at the borderline of affordability for most people. So if you want to survive in the Indian aviation space, you cannot raise your prices beyond, say, 5,000 or 6,000 rupees if you want a decent amount of customers. So the filter of cost is the only thing that matters to most customers, as in even if the flight is carried at 2 a.m. If it's 1,000 rupees cheaper, people will still opt in to lose their sleep rather than paying more. Secondly, the flying market in India is still at the baby stages in spite of having more than 3 times the population of the US. As of 2017, while Indigo's air traffic stood at just 161.5 billion, the US was way ahead at 632 million. And last, in spite of your charges being at the threshold of affordability, it is very difficult to pull off a profit in India. Why? Because the most expensive element in your balance sheet is completely out of control, and that is the fuel cost. That is around 35 to 45, sometimes even 50% of your operation cost, and this price keeps fluctuating based on the geopolitical situations. So the only way you can make money in the Indian aviation space is by increasing your margins without increasing the cost of your tickets. And Indigo was absolute master at it. The first thing Indigo did was that it surprised the entire industry by ordering 100 air cash with Airbus in a single order in the very first year of its operation. And this deal had an order value of $6 billion, which was one of the biggest aircraft deals in aviation history. Now, on the outside, most people thought it to be crazy, but in reality, it was a genius deal made at a strategic time. And Mr. Rakesh Gangwan, CEO founder of Indigo, made this decision for 3 specific reasons. Number 1, back in 2005, Airbus almost completely lost the Indian market, and the Indian companies started buying from Boeing. This was because Airbus aircraft met with a series of accidents in India, and this included the air crashes in 1988, in 1990 and 1992. But after fixing all these problems and the safety issues, Airbus was desperately finding a way to come back to the Indian market. And during this time, when Indigo placed such a huge order of 100 aircrafts, Airbus was by default willing to sell them at a dirt cheap cost. Now, although the exact price are not revealed, as far as the data from the order of Southwest Airlines and Ryanair indicate, the discount could have gone as high as 50%. Secondly, the Airbus aircrafts were way more efficient than Boeing aircrafts. And lastly, Indigo used something called the sales and lease back model that drastically reduced its cost of operation. And here is how this model worked on. This is the technique where the airline buys the aircraft from the manufacturer and sells its assets to another party and then rents it back from the same buyer. Now, let's take an contribute example to understand this. When Indigo places an order for 100 aircrafts, it gets a massive discount by which $100 million aircraft could be bought at a modest price of $15 million. And then Indigo sells this aircraft to a leasing company like Box Aviation for $55 million. Now, here itself they make a profit of $5 million. So after the sale is done, Indigo rents the same aircraft from BOC Aviation for a period of 5 to 8 years, such that Indigo will pay the rent for its incoming revenue from operation. Now this is a great deal for BOC because even at $55 million, BOC Aviation gets a 100 million aircrafts at $55 million without the risk of placing a bulk order. And with that, they are also getting a ready-made customer base that will give them a recurring revenue. And at the same time, if you see for Indigo, it's an amazing deal because it gives Indigo 3 incredible benefits over here its competition. First of all, the company generates an upfront profit of $5 million, which could be used for cash flow, and Indigo can stay cash rich while other players struggle during crunch times. Secondly, under the sales and lease back model, Indigo stated that not all these aircraft will arrive at once, but with a gap of 6 to 8 weeks, so that they can strictly accommodate the flights as per the market conditions. On top of that, any technical glitch or issues with the engineers were to be taken care of either Airbus or the engine supplier. This way, Indigo neither had to pay the cost of maintenance staff nor did it have to pay for maintenance cost of the aircrafts. And lastly, Indigo could easily use way more aircrafts with very less capital compared to the competition. Now the fun is that even Kingfisher used the same sales and lease back model with Airbus, but even then Kingfisher failed miserably and Indigo succeeded at the exact same time in the exact same market. Now the question is, why did this happen? Well, that is because of a fundamental truth of the Indian flyers market, and that is customers love living king size but they don't like paying king size. To tell you about it, Kingfisher and Jet Airways, both these airlines, wanted to give a king size life to their customers, so they gave out in-flight meals, in-flight entertainment system, and whereas Indigo decided to eliminate all these perks and decided to give the customers only what was absolutely needed to travel, and that is a seat and a little bit of legroom. Why? Because food and entertainment would need equipment that would require more fuel to carry and operate, eventually increasing the cost, reducing the efficiency and complicating the workflow, because that would again need additional maintenance. And in order to minimize the travel time, Kingfisher opted in for something called the point-to-point model of operation, whereas Indigo opted for something called the hub and spoke model of operation. And here is how these two models worked out. Let's say we have 6 destinations A, B, C, D, E, N, F, and now if you have to offer a flight connecting all these destinations using a point-to-point model, here is how it would look like. You would need a flight from A to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, and E to F, and then you would need to connect A to C, A to D, A to E, and so on and so forth. So in total, if you want to connect all these 6 destinations, you would need 15 planes, but in the bulb, in the hub and a spoke model, this becomes very simple. Instead of connecting all these destinations with a separate flight, you create a hub O in between these 6 points, such that if you want to connect A to C, this is how it would work. But there will be a plane A which will carry all the passengers who want to go to B, C, D, E, and F. And then when plane A lands at the hub, the passengers will go to their respective flights, which are B, C, D, E, and F, and those planes will then fly back to their respective points. Now on the outside, this might look a little complex to you, but you know what guys, here are the 4 major benefits of using the hub and a spoke model. Number 1, you only need 6 planes in this model as compared to 15 planes in the point-to-point model. Secondly, by using the hub and a spoke model, the planes are more occupied because now you are surviving the same number of customers but with only 6 flights. Thirdly, due to the presence of the central hub, maintenance becomes extremely easy. And lastly, it is very easy to expand your network. All you need to do is just add another spoke by adding plane to the network, and that's it. You can connect all these 6 destinations with the added point. Whereas if you want to add another destination to the point-to-point model, you need another 6 planes to do it. Therefore, the hub and a spoke is that model that can connect people from anywhere to everywhere in the most efficient manner. In this case, if you see, because of using a point-to-point, while Kingfisher held a market share of 19.99% with 66 aircrafts, Indigo almost had the same with 17.6 market share, but it was able to serve them with just 38 aircrafts. This is the reason why Kingfisher and Jet Airways, in the race of providing comfort and convenience, were not able to pull off a profit, whereas Indigo, although intentionally in a loss, began expanding rapidly without bleeding cash. and this continued from 2006 to 2008. And there came the most horrific time in Indian aviation when the oil prices started shooting up. From July 2007 to 2008, the oil prices skyrocketed from just $76 per barrel to $132 per barrel. And when this happened, every single airline started bleeding money. This is the reason why, if you see, from 2007 onwards, the losses of airlines touched crazy levels. Kingfisher went from 498 to 1900 crores in a loss. As Spices, it went from 132 to 340 crores in a loss. Jet was steady at 400 crores in a loss, but then it hit rock bottom to 1236 crores by 2011. But you know what, guys, this is where Indigo became an opportunity, and like we saw on the graph, while every other airline was bleeding money, Indigo went from a loss of 234 crores to a profit of 82 crores, which then shot up by 400 to 480 crores, then touched an insane mark of 700 crores. All of this happened because Indigo's operational costs were low and they were able to rotate their cash better, because of which they were able to pull off a profit when every other player was bleeding. And from here onwards, for the next 10 years, Indigo reached record levels of profit, and today it stands as a market leader with market share of more than 15%. And in addition to its models of operation, while Kingfisher was bleeding, Indigo used it as an opportunity by directly poaching the Kingfisher pilots. This was because Kingfisher was not able to pay its pilots due to its losses, and Indigo, all thanks to its cash reserves, offered the pilots a bonus that was almost equal to the pending salaries at Kingfisher. This way, according to the reports, somewhere between 200 to 300 joined Indigo in just 6 months. This is how Indigo saved a ton of money on training and onboarding of pilots, and became even more profitable in the coming years. Similarly, they also did not mistake of a SpiceJet or Jet Airways with unstable leadership. While SpiceJet has been sold and bought many times, Jet Airways at one point didn't even have a full-time CEO for 15 months, whereas Mr. Aditya Ghost led Indigo for 10 long years from 2008 to 2018. And the result of all this strategy is as astounding